Welcome to the Teaching Autism and Special Education Community Podcast. Hi, I'm Nikki, a passionate special educator, autism advocate, resource creator with over a decade of experience, and you may know me as the face behind Teaching Autism. This podcast is your go-to place for practical tips, hands-on strategies, and inspiring and funny stories to support special educators all around the world, whether it's building independence, creating engaging lessons, or finding that elusive work-life balance. I'm here to help you thrive inside and outside of the classroom. Let's dive into today's episode and make a difference together. Hi, and welcome back to the Teaching Autism and Special Education Community Podcast. Have you ever heard this in a staff room? They know exactly what they're doing. That is manipulation. They're just playing us. They only do that when they want something from us. And maybe you've even thought it yourself in one of those really hard moments as well. Because on the surface, a lot of behavior can actually look strategic. Think of, if a student starts crying right when work is starting. Maybe their behavior escalates when they're told no. Maybe their behavior switches depending on which adult is present, and even suddenly shutting down when expectations increase. All of this can look calculated, but what we're going to talk about today is about behavior that looks manipulative, but it isn't. And I'm hoping that this episode might try and help you see things a little bit differently. Okay, when we label a child manipulative, we assume intent. And when we assume that they are deliberately controlling others for some sort of personal gain. But in most of our special education classrooms, what that manipulation looks like, it's actually either regulation, communication, or survival. So we're going to dive in. And what I want to start with is, what is manipulation really? Because true manipulation requires an awareness of someone else's emotions. It needs intentional planning to exploit those emotions. And it's going to require strategic behavior designed to deceive another person. So that is actually quite some complex social cognition. And many of the students that we work with, they are not operating from that place when they're dysregulated. So when our nervous system is overwhelmed, it is not calmly strategizing what to do next. It is just reacting in the moment. So before you start to assume manipulation, what I want you to do is think about, is this a regulated strategy or is it a survival response? So let's go back to some of those examples that I talked about right at the beginning. So maybe you have a student who will start to cry the moment that a worksheet appears in front of them. And it happens on a regular basis. And at that point, it's really easy to say, well, they're just doing this to get out of work. But let's take a look underneath all of that. So first of all, is the task too hard or too easy? Is their working memory just really overloaded right now? Are they afraid of getting it wrong? Are they already just too dysregulated? Was it the transition? Is this a pattern linked to specific tasks? Is it writing or fine motor fatigue? If that crying consistently removes the demand, then yes, okay, that pattern may strengthen. But the original behavior likely did start as distress that got relief. And so that's just learning, it's not manipulation. So another example, when I talked about how you might see a student calm with one teacher, but really explosive with another one. People will say things like, oh, they know who they can get away with it with, or, they're doing this on purpose. They don't behave that way for them. But what I would like you to do is step back and really have a look at those two different adults. Is one adult more predictable? Are they more regulated? Maybe they're quieter. Maybe they're more structured, more direct. Maybe they're more relational. behavior does shift based on our nervous system cues, and our students are constantly going to be scanning for safety. That isn't manipulation. Okay, and another example, I mentioned about that escalating after being told no. So you say no, they scream, and I have actually seen on IEPs before and student profiles not to use the word no with students because it causes them to escalate and kick off, and we can't use those words, we can't tell them no. And when you say no, they're screaming, and what you might think is, well, that student thinks if I scream loud enough I'll get my way. But in a lot of cases, the escalation of that isn't about changing your mind. It's more, think of it like an inability to tolerate and understand the feelings that they have right now. Maybe it's a feeling of disappointment. And that frustration, the frustration tolerance is a skill, just like emotional regulation is a skill. And if a child doesn't yet have that skill, then their body is just going to react. And sometimes if a child screams really loud, then that escalation may incidentally lead to some of the adults around them backing off. Now, that doesn't mean that it was emotionally calculated. It means that their nervous system was overwhelmed. It overwhelmed their skill set that they have available to them. And this is what's happened there. So I want to look at the nervous system layer because I am aware that I talk a lot about the nervous system, but I probably need to do a podcast episode focused solely on this because I haven't done one, I don't believe. So when we view behavior through a nervous system lens, a lot of it is going to change. I do think the nervous system is something we should teach and learn about a lot more. So fight responses can start to look like control, and flight responses can look like avoidance. Now, you've also got fawn and freeze responses. So a fawn response can be charming or people-pleasing, and a freeze response can look like sort of passive resistance. And all of these things from the outside can appear really strategic, but internally what they actually are automatic responses to stress. And this is where that key question comes in. Was this chosen calmly, or was this triggered automatically? And this is the thing, like the labels do really matter. When we use labels, they matter. When we label a child manipulative, not just does our tone and behavior towards that child change, but also those around us as well. We're going to become less compassionate. We're going to be more suspicious, more rigid, more power-based. And our students are going to feel that as well. Not just the one student, all the students around us are going to feel that as well. And that increases stress, which naturally is going to increase behaviors. So we're stuck in this never-ending loop. Now, here's the balance bit. Children absolutely do learn patterns. We all do. If a behavior results in escape or attention, then what we're doing is reinforcing it. And that's just basic behavior science. But reinforcement is not the same as manipulation. Manipulation it equals learning through that outcome. And our job is to teach alternative skills to our students so that they can cope in these situations. So what I want you to think about is look at your student and ask what skill is missing here to make them act in this way. Is it emotional regulation? Is it communication? Is it their frustration tolerance? Is it executive function? And I want you to stay neutral. I really want you to remove that power struggle energy straight away. And 3, don't over-explain in the moment. I'm a talker. I like a chat. So this was difficult for me too in the beginning. But try to really work on keeping it simple. Don't over-explain in that moment because a dysregulated brain cannot process a lecture and paragraphs and 20 minutes of talking. I also want you to reinforce replacement behaviors. So I want you to model and teach. I need help. This is hard. Can I have a break? And then I want you to reflect later on. I want you to sit down with that student and check in with them. I want you to ask them, when you were upset earlier, what felt tricky? All of this skill building is going to replace those patterns. So First of all, I want to end this by saying, if you have ever thought that a student is maybe manipulating you, I don't want you to walk away from this and think that I'm calling you a bad person, a bad teacher. I'm not. This is a very human reaction when behaviour feels repetitive or intense. And when we sort of change from thinking that students are doing this with intent or, purposely trying to manipulate us, then we can start to feel a little bit more empathy for them. Our behaviour towards them is going to change. And when you start giving those sort of softer responses, you will start to find that those are actually really helpful in reducing escalation. Now, of course, you are allowed to hold boundaries. I'm a firm believer in this. And if you've listened to my podcast, follow me on social media, you know that I am a huge believer in boundaries. And you are allowed to say no, and you are allowed to protect your classroom. But you can do all those without villainizing the child in your classroom or the children in your classroom, the students that you're teaching. So, what is behavior that looks manipulative but isn't? It is usually distress, skill gaps, reinforced patterns, nervous system responses, and communication attempts. So the next time that maybe you hear the word manipulative being thrown around, whether it's by colleagues, other professionals, even family members at times may start to think this, I want you to stop and think, was this strategy or survival? Because it only takes one of you in that team meeting to be able to raise that, and then we can sort of have all of the people involved in that meeting completely change their mindset on how we're going to respond to the student and the behaviour. I hope you found this episode helpful today. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again next week.